it does take time, and it also takes a lot of trust in yourself. Like, I have really had to learn to trust myself and also allow myself to make mistakes. Like, there are definitely some things that I have taken risks on and they haven't sold as well as I thought that they were going to. But there have been way more positive, successful experiences that have come from buying items when I trusted my gut compared to items that I regretted buying. Welcome to episode 5 of the Gem Finders podcast. I'm Amber.
I am Sean.
And in this episode, we are covering how to find amazing things antiquing. And I'm so excited because I just feel like we have gotten good at this.
You better than I.
But you're getting there. You've made a lot of progress over the past year, I think.
I've been trained well.
And hopefully I can help train all of you a little bit. Okay, so finding amazing items while you're antiquing, it really starts with planning. It starts before you even get to an antique store. Before you even go antiquing, you want to make sure that you do a little bit of research about the stores you're going to if you've never been to them before. So it can be helpful to read reviews on Google. Sometimes you can find photos there as well. You can find photos on Facebook sometimes. Occasionally an antique store will have an Instagram. So see if there's any information that you can find beforehand, because antique stores vary so much with what they have and what they offer. And you don't want to waste your time going to an antique store that's not going to have anything that you want. So do a little bit of research, whether you're traveling or just going to some at home, or maybe you're doing a road trip, and make sure that you're selecting stores that seem like they're going to be worth your time. Now, don't follow this 100% because we've gone to some antique stores before where the reviews and the photos were not promising and we found really good things. But it's always a good idea to look. You also want to make sure that you're going consistently. Finding great items while you're antiquing is really about going often and checking back in, revisiting your favorite vendors, revisiting your favorite stores. You're probably not going to have fantastic luck if you're just going every once in a while. And on that note, it's also a good idea to plan to go to a few different stores in one day, because there is a chance that you're not going to find anything at your first stop. And when you kind of have a few more lined up, it just makes the experience feel more satisfying knowing that you're at least going to find a few things. So be consistent, do a little bit of research, and try to plan to make a few stops that day.
So to kind of piggyback off of a little bit of that, when it comes to the research, yes, absolutely do some research, but also pay attention to, if you can find any, to when the photos and when the reviews are from. Sometimes they are from years ago, which is not typically a good sign. Sometimes a lot of these antique stores that you will find online, it will say they're open and they don't even exist anymore. So do the research, but also pay attention to when the research that you find is from.
Yes. And definitely check the hours, because nothing is worse than going to an antique store and finding out that it's closed when you get there. Now, sometimes they do post their hours and they are still not open during those times, but at least you know you're doing everything you can to try to prevent going to a store that's closed, because that's never a good way to start your day of antiquing. Once you're in the store, you need to have a strategy. Don't just walk in and go down a random aisle. Like, decide how you're going to conquer that space. And it sounds silly, but I really feel like this makes a big difference. So personally, when I walk in to an antique store, I always go to the right. So then when I walk in, I'm not like, okay, where am I going to start? I just always go to the right. I know it's one less decision I have to make that day. I start in the right. And then if there's any turns, I always go to the right first. And then I'll come back and do whatever section I didn't go to before. So that's just kind of my method. And like I said, it just gives me one less thing to have to think about.
And it is good to have a plan, because some of these antique stores are so large, like the antique malls especially. They are so large, you walk in and you're just overwhelmed. You're like, where do I start? There are so many different directions to go. So it definitely does help to have a plan going into it.
And you want to make sure you go down every aisle. You want to make sure that you're checking every nook and cranny, because you might miss a vendor that has exactly what you want. So make sure that you're walking around with a purpose and that you make it to everything that the store has to offer. This is one of my favorite tips, and I really do think that this matters. I feel so silly saying this, but I do this every time. When you walk into an antique store, do not grab a cart, okay? I feel like you're jinxing it. you can't get a cart or a basket until you have things to put in it. So find like a couple things, and then when you can't hold anything else, then you go get a cart or a basket. Or if you're holding something that's really fragile and you need to set it down right now. But make sure you find at least 1 or 2 things before you grab that cart. The only exception is if you're antiquing with children, then I don't feel like the universe holds it against you. So if you have kids, go ahead and grab cart.
I don't know how much this qualifies as actual tips or advice for how to get good at antiquing. I think this is more of a superstition.
I think it matters.
There are times when we'll walk into an antique store and there will be carts in the front. She'll be like, should we grab one? And I know at this point to say no, because that's what she's going to do anyway. So
because every time I grab a cart, I never find anything. Like if I walk in and grab a cart, it's empty when I walk out. I don't find things. I don't know. Let me know if you have anything weird like that you follow. But I think another thing to consider as you're antiquing is becoming aware of the environments that you like. So are you a person that loves to dig through the piles? Do you like a cluttered fleetique and kind of that look of so many things around that they couldn't fit one more item on the shelves? Do you like a really well curated antique store where things are styled and you kind of can get inspired about how you're going to use these pieces in your own home? Because there really are so many across the board on every single end of the spectrum. So seek out the stores and the experiences that you like so that you have fun doing this. If you're not a person who likes to dig through the junk, then maybe skip those antique stores. You will still be able to find amazing things for you, even if you skip stops that feel overwhelming to you personally.
yeah, there are so many different types of antique stores and fleetiques. They all offer a different experience. You will never run out of options. So find the types of antique stores or fleetiques that are the most conducive to your productivity and your creativity when you're shopping for these items, because you need to be in the right headspace when you're doing this. Otherwise, you will miss things, you won't be enjoying it, and it just overall, it won't be worth your time.
There are definitely stores that we haven't gone back to just because I'm like, I can't handle how this is set up mentally.
You do not like to dig through things.
No.
So I will do a little bit of it, but I definitely have a limit.
I don't like to dig. I like a cluttered shelf. Don't get me wrong, but I don't like to dig through a pile.
Her favorites are by far the ones that are styled, and each booth kind of is set up so that you can view these items in sort of like real life applications and situations, how you might use them in the real world. I feel like those are the ones when we walk in there, you're like, oh, I love the way that this is set up.
Those are definitely my favorite as a shopper, but the prices are always higher. So I do have to like be ready mentally for things other than that. And I think that that's okay. But if there's a store where I have to do a lot of digging or where it's filthy, I'm out.
That is very true. The different types of stores, you can kind of get a feel for what the prices are going to be like as soon as you walk in. It's almost like it seems like standard across the board that those ones that are styled already, you know that the prices are going to be higher.
Well, but they did more work. So
That's
I understand
true.
that.
That's
I get it. I get why their prices are higher. And I think those are the stores that we find some really, really unique, hard to find, eye-catching items at. So it's also good to have a balance. I'm just saying, don't make this a stressful experience for yourself. Make sure that you're having fun. Maybe you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, but don't set up your day with a schedule that you're going to hate and be mentally overloaded all day long. Okay, so you get to the antique store. You walk past the carts. You don't grab one. Now you're walking through the aisles. As you're walking through the aisles, you want to make sure that you're really looking at everything. Look up, look down, look behind things, look in things. Take your time if you can, but also be mindful of how much time you're spending. I think that's really important, that you don't want to rush, but you also don't want to take too much time either, because then you're going to, run out of time. And you're also going to use up your mental capacity, because you can only scan through so many things in one day before you get to the point where you're like, I just can't look at anything else.
Yeah, it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you walk into a lot of the stores, and some of these booths they're completely packed, and that's not a bad thing, but it is worth your time to check behind things. Sometimes there will be like paintings that are leaning up and they will have stuff behind those on the shelves, things like that. There are a lot of items that kind of get hidden unintentionally, I'm sure, but there's just so much in a booth sometimes that they don't have anywhere else to put things. So it's worth your time to check behind things. And there's one in particular that we go to where they have a lot of drawers and things like that. And they have all of the drawers are filled. So you have to check inside all of the drawers too. So I don't know if there's a lot of stores that are like that, but it's worth your time to check because they might have some gems hidden inside of the drawers.
Yes. And going back, this is something else I thought about on making sure that you're like mentally prepared for the day. Make sure that you have some snacks. Pack some snacks before you go. You cannot antique on an empty stomach. And also you have to wear layers because if it's too hot or too cold in that store, I mentally have a hard time. I can't shop when I'm cold. So think about your needs before you go in and make sure that you're comfortable, full, and ready to go. I also want to talk about antiquing with other people because this can be a great thing and also a terrible thing. If you're antiquing with the right person or people, it can be so helpful, especially if they kind of understand your style, if they know what you're looking for, because somebody else's eyes might be drawn to something that's different from what you would have seen. There are so many times where I walk through first and I see things and then Sean will come back and be like, look at this. Did you see this? And I'll be like, I didn't even see that. And it's a great find. So if you're antiquing with the right person, it can really be helpful. But you have to be careful because if you go antiquing with somebody who likes to talk a lot, you might be distracted. You also have to be careful and kind of like set expectations up front. If you're going antiquing with somebody who likes similar things as you, make sure that you're going with somebody who's going to be like calm and chill and like fair and not somebody who you feel like you have to fight with. Over like the amazing finds. So I definitely think that going antiquing with other people can be a great way to help find amazing things, but you really do have to be careful because it can easily turn into a sour experience if you're like serious about antiquing and it doesn't go the way you want it to go.
I think that you and I have very different styles of how we look at things in antique stores. I think that our eyes are just drawn to different things. And I think that helps us in the long run because like you said, there are times when you'll walk through and I'll find something afterwards and vice versa. There are times when I go through first and then you find something. So it can be very beneficial to have somebody with you if they know the style that you're looking for and if they can be helpful in that way. But I would say that you probably haven't always thought that I was the best person to be antiquing with, especially in the early days. I would find all of the things that you hated and try to get you to buy them. So,
and then I would feel so bad when I had to turn him down. And then he would get frustrated with how many things I was turning down.
All of the things.
And like sometimes we would get back in the car after a day of antiquing together and the vibes just weren't good.
I felt so defeated. I didn't come home with any of the items that I suggested.
And I would be like overthinking everything, being like, he is so mad at me right now. But at the end of the day, like I needed to make sure that I was making choices. This was before he was really like 2 feet in the business.
Yeah, I would say so. I am probably in the early part of me being all in. I probably still wasn't quite where you wanted me to be.
But at the end of the day, I had to make sure that I was making choices that were right for the business, even if that meant saying no to him.
But sometimes I was right.
And sometimes he does find amazing things. And now he kind of has I feel like you have a much better idea of what I want to bring to the shop. And because my style definitely guides our inventory.
100%.
It is not a joint effort when it comes to the style of the items in the shop.
No, but I definitely have kind of been trained by you to know the general style of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And also, if you haven't watched the previous episode, this is a callback to that with our general rule of trying to get a 75% profit margin. That has also kind of helped reel me in with the pieces that I suggest because now I kind of know, is this worth even suggesting because can we make as much as we want to from it? Yeah. So I think that along with you just kind of beating it into me what style I need to be looking for.
And even if you're not antiquing to resell, I really do think that it's a great idea to go into it with some sort of financial plan. So I never antique with a budget. I am never like, this is the max I can spend today because I do feel like that 75% hope for the profit margin does reel me in that aspect. But if you're not reselling, I do think a budget is a great plan because it will help you decide what pieces you can spend a little bit more on and also what pieces you have to pass on.
Yeah, I think budgeting is good for everybody. We should have a budget.
I am not recommending to not have a budget.
No, it is not a good thing because we will just find things and we will take them up to the register and have no idea what our total is until they give us the final total. And sometimes it is much higher than we expected it to be.
So not suggesting that approach. But I do think it's a good idea to be having at least one strategy in place that kind of will keep you in check financially. If you're going antiquing with somebody else, it can also be really fun to help them find the things that they are looking for. I have a friend I've gone antiquing with a few times and I helped her find items for her wedding. And I loved that. I loved kind of knowing what she was on the hunt for. We created kind of like a vision together and I loved helping her execute that. So that can also be something really rewarding about going antiquing with other people.
I mean, essentially the core of our business is doing that, just not with someone physically there, but the core of our business is to find items for other people. And we do have a page where you can give us requests of what you're looking for, and we'll take that with us and try to find those items while we're antiquing. So even if somebody isn't physically there with us, I feel like all of the time we are antiquing for somebody else.
Be careful. You might end up with a whole antiquing business. Yeah, I agree. We really are antiquing for other people all of the time, and that's what makes this so fun.
So the next point that we wanted to touch on is making sure that you take a second walk through. We don't always take necessarily a full second walk through, but all of the time while she's checking out, I am walking through usually almost the entire store because sometimes our checkout process takes so long because we have so many items. So I'm walking through again, and I would say 85 to 90% of the time I find something that we missed the first time. And even if I don't find it then, there are times where we will take like a quick second walk through, both of us together, and almost all the time, almost 100% of the time, we will find things that we missed on that first walkthrough.
I'll be like, how did we miss this? So a second walkthrough is always a good idea. Even if it's shorter, even if you're just kind of breezing through, it doesn't hurt. If you have time, because we also have to be mindful about how much time we're spending at the store. If you're doing a full day of antiquing, you don't want to compromise the rest of your day, but it is always a good idea. And something else I like to do as well is I like to take pictures of the items that we're considering. Sometimes I walk up to an item and I'm like 100% yes, and I take it up to the counter immediately. And other times I'm like, well, this is a maybe. Let me see how many other things I find. Let me see kind of how much money we spend here, and then I'll make a decision. And I really like to take pictures on my phone of what the item was, and I like to try to get the tag in the photo. That way, we'll kind of, at the end of our round, we'll scroll through the photos and think about anything we were considering. I'll look at the prices really quick, see if it kind of feels right to grab it or what we want to pass on. And doing that second walkthrough, like Sean said, he normally does it when I'm checking out. That can be a great way to like tag team the store if you are like going with somebody who is antiquing with you for the purpose of reselling.
Yeah, sometimes you need somebody else to help you cover the entire store because sometimes they are so large. So this kind of segues right into another bullet point that we wanted to touch on is if you walk into a booth and you see something that immediately catches your eye, you might immediately grab it and take it up to the register, or you might just be so focused on that you will miss what's around it. It is always a good idea to come back to that section to see what you might have missed, because once your eye is drawn to something, you're just singularly focused, and it's so easy to miss everything that's around it.
I agree. And I think it's important to note that a lot of resellers, myself included, but a lot of resellers will kind of shop in a similar style. Like everyone has their own style, even if they don't realize it, and everyone is drawn to certain items. So if there's something that you find that you like in a booth, there is a pretty high chance that there is another item in that booth that you're also going to feel drawn towards. And I think that that's important from both sides to consider. The vendors and the shops can have their own style, but it's also important to think about your own style and having a general idea of what that is as you're antiquing, because it can help you have a filter on as you're looking through all of the options. Because like we talked about before, it can be so overwhelming and it can be difficult to see what speaks to you in all of the junk, in all of the stuff, in all of the clutter. And if you have an idea of what your style is, or even like a general kind of loose list of the items that you're looking for, it can be helpful to have that train of thought going into it. But you have to be careful that you don't get too specific, because one, that can make the day frustrating if you have things that you're definitely looking for and you don't find them. And something that we run into all the time is as soon as we start to look for something specific, we like never see it anymore. We will see like the same item so many times and we'll pass on it. And then somebody will request it and we'll be like, okay, we'll look for it. And then we don't see it again for a really long time. So make sure that you kind of have a general idea of what you might like to find that day, because it can be helpful, but don't attach yourself to those items or that list too much, or you might miss out on a lot of other really great pieces.
I think that having a style in mind is great for multiple reasons. This can kind of tie in to what we touched on earlier with, planning multiple stops in a day, or just kind of planning out your day in general. If you know a store or a booth or a number of booths within a store fit your style, that can kind of help you plan your day accordingly and kind of set yourself up for the highest chance of success.
And I also think that another really helpful tip is when you're checking out, because it normally takes a while, ask the person who's checking you out, ask them if they have any other recommendations for
checking you out.
Ask them if they have recommendations for any other stores in the area that might have what you're looking for. So for us, we are always looking for brass, glass, and stone items. So at checkout, especially if we're in an area that I'm not familiar with, I will ask them, like, do you have any other antique stores around here that you would recommend? We're especially looking for glass, brass, stone items, small artwork, things like that. And sometimes they have really great recommendations, and sometimes they tell us about places that like weren't even on Google. Mm-hmm. So that can be a really great way to kind of make your day more efficient. Occasionally they're wrong, and we have had unsuccessful stops based off of those recommendations. But I would say that like 9 times out of 10, they are really helpful.
And they're sometimes helpful not just for stores, but they will give us connections to people or auctions, things like that. Just, it never hurts to ask, because especially if you are in an area that you're not familiar with what's around, a lot of the people that run and work at antique stores are very knowledgeable about the area and what types of items are in the area and who collects those items and who sells those items. So it never hurts to ask to get a little bit more information about that.
Another reason it can be important to kind of vocalize what you're looking for at checkout, especially if it's in your area and a store that you go to often, is because I think that you can truly influence what the vendors bring in. I know that people know that we're looking for glassware, and I'm pretty sure that like we have impacted some of the glassware like being brought into the booths, because they kind of know what we're looking for. And then we come back and like I've definitely had people say at checkout like, oh, I saw that and I thought about you and I had a feeling you would grab it. So don't be afraid to kind of make those connections and begin those relationships with the people working at the antique stores.
Relationships are so important. I'm terrible at it. I'm a very introverted person. I don't have an outgoing personality, so it's so hard for me to start those conversations. But those connections can be so helpful. And just being able to relay the information about what you're interested in, and even if you are a reseller, just being upfront and honest that you are a reseller. Sometimes you get a mixed reaction to that, but for the most part, we get a positive reaction to that, and people are usually more willing to work with us and help us out once we tell them that. So if you are a reseller, just let them know. Be upfront and be honest about that, and it actually might help your chances of being able to find what you're looking for and influencing the stores or the booths to bring in more inventory that you might be interested in purchasing.
It's definitely helped us more than it's hurt us.
Yeah.
We have had way more positive interactions sharing that we have a reselling business compared to like negative reactions where people seem like, oh, I don't want them to shop here.
Yeah. Most of the time it's positive and they're like, oh, that's great. And they encourage us. And usually that leads into other conversations and other connections that can help us out along the way.
And the final and most important part of this process is to trust your gut. And I think that it has taken you some time to get on board with the fact that that is like one of the main things I use when I shop.
Yes. I definitely have doubted you many times in the past, but I don't remember if it was this episode or the last episode that I mentioned, like, I can't argue with the success that this business has had. And I mean, you said that the style of the items that we bring is 100% yours. So I have learned that she does just have this weird instinct about what is not even necessarily what is just valuable, but what will be a good item to bring to the shop. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a super valuable item, but something that just fits the shop and fits the style. You have this instinct that I don't think can be taught. So I'm sorry. That's probably not what you want to hear. I don't think that there's any big secret to making that work, but yeah, you just have this weird instinct that most of the time is right.
Thank you. We have that on record. It's only right when it comes to antiquing, okay? I want to be clear that, like, I hardly ever hear my gut in any other situation of my life. I overthink everything and have a really hard time making other choices, but when it comes to antiquing, my gut is there.
She never knows where our vehicles are parked. She has a terrible instinct when it comes to where we parked our vehicles.
But most of the time you park it, so like...
But she will be so confident and so assertive with where she's walking, and 99% of the time, it is the complete wrong direction.
Fake it till you make it. And I think trusting your gut is important for a few different reasons. One, I think that it can help guide what you're supposed to have. If you have to think too long about something, you're probably not supposed to grab it, at least not that day. If it is still there next time you're there, then it was probably meant to be yours. But I think it can help you make decisions, especially if you think about, like, okay, what was my gut reaction when I saw this item? And also, this is a little out there, but I do think that sometimes it helps, like, not bring items with bad energy into the house. Like, sometimes it's a great item and maybe it's a good price, but like sometimes the item is just like, no. And I can't bring it up.
We've had these discussions before. We've actually had some customers kind of touch on this too, that they feel the same way. I can't say that I necessarily ever feel any energy from any of the items, but
I do. I do.
She definitely does.
Sometimes I know a certain item is a no, and I can't tell you why. I just am not supposed to grab it that day. So work on trusting your gut. And if you don't hear it yet, it will come. Even though you said you don't think it's teachable, I do think it is like a muscle that everyone can exercise, but it does take time. And it also takes a lot of trust in yourself. Like, I have really had to learn to trust myself and also allow myself to make mistakes. Like, there are definitely some things that I have taken risks on and they haven't sold as well as I thought that they were going to. But there have been way more positive, successful experiences that have come from buying items when I trusted my gut compared to items that I regretted buying. So make sure that you're listening to yourself.
Yeah, I think that it probably can be trained a bit, but the biggest thing with that is just exercise it constantly. If you have a feeling about something, if you can afford it, if it makes sense, get it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but don't give up. Keep exercising that muscle. And it's not really a muscle, but whatever it is, keep exercising it. And eventually you'll have success, and that will give you more confidence. That will encourage you to trust yourself more. And I think the biggest thing that helps justify trusting your gut is when you have success. I think that's why your instincts are so strong, is because you have had continued success with trusting your gut and getting us to the point that we're at now.
Thank you. You said a lot of nice things about me this episode. Thank you, babe. Whether or not you are a reseller, like, you can always sell the item later. Like, if you're at an antique store and you're not reselling for profit, and if you buy something and you regret it down the road, like, you can just resell it. And it's even easier to do that when you're not trying to make a profit from it. Like, if you're just buying things for your own home and you regret it later, you can probably make at least what you paid for it.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah. So don't worry too much. Don't overspend. Be careful of your budget, but also trust yourself too. Well, let us know if this was helpful. Let us know if there's anything we talked about in this episode that you want us to dive into further, because we want to make episodes that are beneficial to you.
And let us know in the comments if you have any tips, or if you have any superstitions, things like that kind of help guide you when you are antiquing or sourcing or collecting, whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, because we are sharing this on a number of different platforms, but at the end of the day, Gem Finders is a community and we want to hear from all of you. You can always share with us on social media too. So let us know and let's go find some vintage.